As I sipped my morning coffee on the porch, gazing out at the manicured lawns and white picket fences of Willowbrook Estates, a subtle shiver traced my spine despite the warm sunlight bathing our suburban haven. The air carried a faint earthly hint beyond the scent of fresh-cut grass, but I shook it off, focusing on the day's rhythm, virtual meetings piling up in my inbox, the soft hum of my wife's laughter from the kitchen as she prepared breakfast. Our life here blended quiet mornings with neighborly nods, punctuated by occasional block party invitations in the mailbox. Yet, as I scanned the neighborhood guidelines pinned to the fridge, no red flowers in the gardens, no exceptions. A fleeting unease brushed my thoughts, quickly buried under the excitement of my looming promotion and the weekend's promise of barbecues under the stars. It started innocently enough, or at least that's what I told myself later when the nightmares began bleeding into my waking hours. I was out in the backyard that afternoon, kneeling in the soft earth to plant approved perennials, whites and blues only per HOA rules. My hands dug into the cool, loamy soil when my fingers brushed something unexpected. Not a rock, not a root. I pulled it free, and there it was, a single crimson petal, vibrant and out of place, like a drop of blood on a white tablecloth. It shouldn't have been there. Red flowers were forbidden, a quirky bylaw I'd dismissed as an eccentric founder's whim. But as I held it between my thumb and forefinger, the world tilted. A rush of images flooded my mind, unbidden, sharp as shattered glass. I saw shadowed figures in antique clothing, digging frantically under a moonlit sky, their shovels biting into the same earth I knelt on. Murmurs carried tales of crimes long buried, a murder concealed, a theft that shattered lives, bodies hastily interred to hide the evidence. The visions pulsed with otherworldly clarity, the scent of decay filling my nostrils, the sharp taste of blood on my tongue. I dropped the petal, gasping, and the world snapped back. My heart hammered against my ribs. Just a trick of the light, I thought, or maybe low blood sugar from skipping lunch. But as I stood, brushing dirt from my knees, I couldn't shake the chill that had settled in my bones. That night, sleep evaded me. My wife Adeline murmured about my tossing and turning, but I waved it off. The visions returned in fragments, more insistent now. I saw a woman in a Victorian dress, her eyes wide with terror as strong male hands pushed her into a shallow grave. The soil of Willowbrook Estates, our pristine suburban paradise, was riddled with secrets, the ground itself a vault of forgotten sins. By morning I was bleary-eyed, but curiosity gnawed at me. I skipped my first meeting and headed to the local library, telling Adeline I had errands to run. The archives were a dusty corner in the back, overseen by an elderly librarian who eyed me suspiciously when I asked about the history of our neighborhood.
Willowbrook Estates, built in the 90s on old farmland,
she said, her voice carrying a hesitation that mirrored my unease. I pored over microfilm and yellowed maps, piecing together fragments. There it was, buried in a footnote. The land had once been an unofficial cemetery in the 1800s, a pauper's field for the indigent and the illicitly deceased, abandoned when the town expanded. It was paved over for progress. No records of exhumations. The bodies were still there, beneath our homes, our gardens, our lives. I drove home in a daze, the crimson petal tucked in my pocket like a talisman. As I pulled into the driveway, another vision struck, stronger this time, like a fever dream. I inhabited the body of a man from the past, my hands, his hands, wrapping around a throat, squeezing until life ebbed away. The guilt was visceral, a weight in my chest that made me clutch the steering wheel, white-knuckled. Was this my own buried sin bubbling up? No, impossible. I'd lived a clean life, corporate job, loving wife, no skeletons in my closet. But doubt crept in. That promotion I'd angled for, had I stepped on toes too harshly? Spread a rumor or two? The vision faded, leaving me sweating in the afternoon heat. Word spread somehow. That evening at the neighborhood barbecue, Tom from across the street cornered me by the grill. "Heard you were digging around in the archives. Find anything juicy?" His smile was too tight, his eyes darting. I laughed it off. But as the night wore on, I noticed the hushed conversations. Mrs. Hargrove, the HOA president, pulled me aside.
No red flowers, remember? We keep things uniform here.
Her tone was sharp, as if I'd planted the petal myself. The visions escalated that week, striking without warning, while mowing the lawn, during a Zoom call, even as I brushed my teeth. Each peeled back another layer of the estate's grim history. A 1920s lynching, bodies dumped in unmarked pits, a bootlegger's hideout where rivals were buried alive. The ground beneath us was a necropolis, and the crimson petals, symbols of blood, passion, and death, were harbingers, pushing up through the soil like warnings from the grave. Paranoia set in like rot. I began seeing crimson flecks everywhere, a smear on the sidewalk, a petal caught in the mailbox. Were they real or hallucinations? My body rebelled, skull-splitting headaches, nausea that kept me from eating. Adeline noticed, of course.
You're not yourself, Mike. What's going on?
I confessed bits and pieces, expecting her to dismiss it as stress. Instead, her face paled. I've seen things too. Dreams of digging, of bones. She hadn't touched any petals, but the infection was spreading, the soil's secret seeping into our collective subconscious. It wasn't just us. The next morning, anonymous notes appeared in mailboxes across the block. I know what you did last summer. Vague, yet pointed. At first, I dismissed it as a prank, but accusations soon flew. During Thursday's HOA meeting, tempers flared.
Someone's stealing from the community fund,
shouted Elaine from number 12, her eyes wild.
I saw it in a dream. It was you, Tom.
Tom denied it vehemently, but his denial cracked when he admitted to borrowing petty cash years ago. The visions exposed us all, dragging hidden sins into the light. Petty thefts, affairs, lies that had festered in the dark. I investigated further, driven by a compulsion I couldn't name. Late one night, I snuck into the restricted wooded area at the edge of the estates, a tangled thicket of oaks and underbrush. Off limits per HOA rules, supposedly for environmental preservation. Flashlight in hand, I pushed through the brambles, the air thick with the scent of damp earth and something fouler, like rot. Visions assaulted me relentlessly, a procession of translucent ghosts pointing furious fingers. Murderer! They hissed, but it wasn't my face in the memories. It was an ancestor's, perhaps, or just an echo of the collective guilt. My own regrets surfaced, cheating on a college exam, sabotaging a colleague for personal gain. Small things, but they loomed large now, amplified by the phenomenon. Back home, the paranoia metastasized. Adeline found a crimson petal on her pillow, and that night she woke screaming from a vision of her own infidelity, something she'd confessed to me years ago, forgiven and forgotten, or so I'd thought. "It's making us relive it all," she sobbed. The neighborhood descended into chaos. Vandalism erupted. Windows smashed with rocks wrapped in notes reading, "Confess your sins." Threats escalated. Anonymous calls in the dead of night. Distorted voices murmuring, "The ground knows. It will swallow you." Cars were keyed with gravestone-like symbols. Tom, unraveling fastest, confronted me in my driveway, shoving a fistful of crimson petals in my face. "You started this, digging up the past." He swung at me, and we scuffled on the lawn, neighbors watching from behind curtains. Physical strain wore me down. My skin itched constantly, as if the soil's taint had seeped into my pores. Sleepless nights left me hollow-eyed, my reflection in the mirror a stranger's gaunt, haunted. Adeline urged me to sell the house and flee, but I couldn't. The pull was too strong, the need to uncover the core of this horror too compelling. Online research revealed folklore about blood petals, manifestations in cursed grounds that force a reckoning with buried truths. I suspected the estate's developers had known. Why else the ban on red flowers? But to keep the past dormant. The vision spread through the community like a plague. The next block party, meant to restore normalcy, devolved into a confessional frenzy. People shouted admissions of embezzlement, domestic abuse, and long-buried feuds. Fights erupted over visions of betrayals. Police were called, but even they seemed affected. One officer muttered about ghosts in the dirt while taking statements. Vandalism grew targeted. My garage door spray-painted with "Dig deeper, sinner." Untraceable threats arrived via email. "Meet in the woods at midnight, or your secrets go public." I couldn't ignore it anymore. The phenomenon was escalating, the visions now collective hallucinations shared among us. Last night, a group vision struck during dinner. Everyone in the cul-de-sac froze, eyes glazing over as we relived a mass burial from the cemetery days, feeling the dirt cascade over our faces. Panic ensued. Screams rang through the streets. Adeline packed a bag, begging me to come with her, but I refused. "I have to end this," I said, though I had no plan, only a desperate hunch that the wooded area held the key. As dawn broke, more petals pushed through the lawns, their crimson stains spreading like wounds. The neighborhood fractured, families fleeing, for sale signs sprouting overnight. But for those of us ensnared, escape seemed impossible. My own guilt gnawed deeper, visions of my father's death, how I'd ignored his pleas in his final days to prioritize my career. Was that the reason? Personal reckonings amplified by the land's malice. The threats culminated in a note slipped under my door. Tonight, the heart of the woods. Face it or perish. I knew I had to go. Arming myself with a flashlight and a shovel, I slipped out as Adeline slept, her face etched with worry even in repose. The woods loomed darker than before, branches clawing at the sky like skeletal fingers. As I pushed deeper, visions bombarded me. The cemetery in its prime, graves desecrated for development, spirits unrested, paranoia peaked, every rustle a pursuer, every shadow a threat. Deeper in, the air grew thick and oppressive. I stumbled into a clearing, unnatural in its perfection. A circle of bare earth ringed by half-buried ancient stones. Crimson petals carpeted the ground, pulsing with an inner light. Here the phenomenon's core throbbed like a heartbeat. Visions converged, my life flashing before me, intertwined with the estate's horrors. I saw myself as the murderer from the past, then as the victim. Guilt and innocence blurring. Figures emerged from the trees, neighbors, ghosts. Tom stepped forward, eyes vacant.
You unearthed it. Now we all pay.
I raised the shovel, heart pounding as the ground beneath me shifted, the soil parting like a mouth opening wide. The confrontation was upon me, my own guilt rising to meet whatever abomination lay at the heart of this cursed place. In the heart of that clearing, the ground yawned wider, revealing a pit choked with bones and blooming crimson petals, the collective grave of Willowbrook's forgotten dead. Tom and the shadowy figures, neighbors twisted by visions, or specters themselves, lunged at me, their faces twisted into masks of rage. But it was my own hands that betrayed me most. Driven by primal fear, I swung the shovel not at them, but at the earth itself, striking where the roots twisted like veins around a flower-like heart. "This ends now," I roared, though my voice cracked with doubt. As the blade hit deep, a wail rose from the pit, and the visions exploded in a kaleidoscope of guilt. My father's neglected pleas, Adeline's forgiven betrayal, the petty sins of a life I'd deemed clean. The figures recoiled, dissolving into mist as I frantically shoveled soil back into the maw, burying the horror anew. Petals withered under the dirt, and the ground sealed with a sickly slurp, leaving only a faint scar on the earth. Exhausted, I stumbled home through the dawn-lit woods, the neighborhood silent as if the plague had lifted. The visions faded to faint traces, a hollow victory. Adeline greeted me with tearful relief, and by week's end the for sale signs vanished, confessions hushed into uneasy truces. But the soil's influence lingered, a subtle itch in my mind, nurturing the flaws we'd all tried to bury. As I settled onto the porch that morning, sipping coffee and gazing at the flawless lawns and white picket fences, An ethereal presence brushed my thoughts. A voice like rustling leaves, neither ghost nor conscience, but something ancient in the earth.
Evil blooms not from the ground, but from within.
It murmured.
Nurtured by denial, perpetuated by the facades you build.
I shook it off, turning to my inbox amid the hum of Adeline's laughter from the kitchen. Our perfect suburban rhythm resuming. Yet, as I pinned a fresh neighborhood guideline to the fridge, no red flowers, no exceptions, I absent-mindedly crushed a stray crimson petal in my pocket, unknowingly sowing it into the garden later that day. The cycle turned, secrets festering beneath the manicured surface. And you, listener, check your own soil. What petals push through your denials? The horror lurks not just in Willowbrook, but beneath every facade, waiting for a single unearthed truth to bloom. In the quiet of your own home, listen closely. Can you hear the roots stirring beneath your feet, hungry for the light of your unspoken sins?
Hey guys, it's Malice here. I really appreciate you sticking around until the end of the story. I'm a one-man operation and trying my best to grow, so if you like what you just heard, please leave me a like. Subscribe if you want to hear more, and please send me any reading requests you might have. I'm always struggling to find new content. Thanks again, and stay scared.